Dear learners, welcome to Studying with Khullan Sir. Today I am going to be talking about present indefinite tense, the first tense, and in this very video I think there'd be no confusion as far as this tense is concerned. If you have any questions, you can leave the questions in the comment section. I'll try and answer those questions. So, without wasting a single second, let's get into it. Dear learners, before I start discussing the tenses, I would like you to have a quick look at the two things, person and number. Now, these two things are quite essential for learning the tenses and their usage. Now, let's have a quick look at the three persons we have in English. First person, second person, and third person. Now the question naturally arises what they are. In fact, first person refers to the person speaking. That means it is the person who is speaking. Second person refers to the person spoken to. And third person refers to the person spoken of. मतलब जो बात कर रहा हो वो फर्स्ट पर्सन है, जो बात को सुन रहा हो वो सेकंड पर्सन है, और तीसरा जिसके बारे में बात किया जा रहा है वो थर्ड पर्सन. Okay? Now let's have a look at the examples written over here. The examples of the first person are I and we. I is singular and we is plural. And the only example of the second person is you. And all the rest are third persons. Let's have a look at the examples. He, she, it, my hand, your house. Now I'll talk about my hand a little bit because here the students get confused. There are some students who get confused and they think that as my is written, so it must be the first person. But actually it is not so. I'll make that out clear by telling you a trick. I'll tell you how. You have to think that my hand is not I, my hand is not we. So we can naturally conclude that my hand must be any other person than the first person. So it must not be the first person. This is what we call the elimination theory. Okay. Now let's have a look at the note written over here. Infinite, that means in a word, except first and second person, all are third persons. Okay. Now we would move on to the number. This number in grammar is divided into two, singular number and plural number. Singular number refers to one person or thing. Just have a look at the examples. Boy, girl, elephant. These are quite easy to understand. And plural number refers to more than one person or thing. Now let's have a look at the examples. The same examples are made plural here. Boys, girls, elephants. Okay. Now the question is, what tense is? Tense refers to the time of an action. That means each and every action happens at a certain period of time, and that time is known as the tense. In fact, the word tense comes from the Latin word which is tempus, and it means time. So we can easily conclude time is tense, tense is time. And it is the time of what? It is the time of the verb. Now we have three tenses, present, past and future, in English and in many other languages as well. Now these three tenses are further subdivided into four classes or groups: indefinite, continuous, perfect, perfect continuous. That means each and every tense, present indefinite, past indefinite, future indefinite, present continuous, past continuous, future continuous, and the like. Okay. Now before I start discussing what present indefinite tense is all about, I would like to tell you a piece of information. In fact, I have made the same video in Bangla language. If you would like to watch that video, you can go to the description box. I'll leave the link in. Almost all the videos that I make on grammar are also made in Bangla language. So if you follow these two languages and follow my channel or the videos, you can subscribe to both the channels. Well, without wasting time, let's start discussing what present indefinite tense is all about. Present indefinite tense refers to an action in the present time or habitual action or eternal truth. Now, I'll make it easier for you to remember this or to understand this particular tense. I would like you to have a look at the trick I have done for you. There are 3 points and all these 3 points have to be kept in mind. If you can remember and keep these points in mind, I think you don't need to go through the definition of present indefinite tense or remember it. Okay? The first point is it is an action in the present time. That means present indefinite tense refers to an action in the present time, or it refers to a habitual action, or it refers to an eternal truth or a universal truth. An eternal truth is also known as a universal truth. Okay, now we are going to look at the form, and this is of paramount importance. In fact, while discussing tenses, this form would be the most important thing for you to learn, because whenever you would like to write or speak any sentence following the tenses, you need to remember the form or the pattern of those particular tenses. Okay, here the subject would be there at first, and after that the verb would be there in its first form, and after that there might be other words. Sometimes students write or learn that it is the object which is written over here, but sometimes we don't have objects in English sentences. Like we can say birds fly, there is no object, or we can say birds fly in the sky, there is no object, so we are not supposed to write object. I think it's better to write other words, because other words include the objects as well. Okay, I'd like to tell you what V1, V2, V3 stand for. Just have a close look. This is the first form of the verb, and that's why I have written it as V1. This is the present form of the verb. This one is the second form of the verb, and that's why I have written it as V2. This form is known as the past form of the verb. This is the third form of the verb. That's why V3 is written. This is known as the past participle form of the verb. Okay, all the verbs have these 3 forms, with the exception of a few modals, which I'll not talk about right at this moment. Now I would like you to have a close look at the 2 other forms of verbs, V4 and V5. Now these 2 forms are the variations of the first form. That is what we can say. Sometimes we need to use the ing form of the verb, and that is why V1 plus ing is added, and this is what we call the ing form of the verb. And sometimes we need to add s or es to the end of the verb, and this is what we can call easily as the s or es form of the verb. Now these are the 5 forms of the verbs. Now I would like you to have a close look at some of the verbs I have written down. This is the verb which some students might find it confusing. Just have a close look at these forms of the verbs. The first one is be, am, is, are. These are the present forms. Was and were, these are the past forms. And in the past participle section we have only one verb, which is been. Now these verbs, all these 7 verbs are called be verbs altogether. Now let's have a quick look at some of the verbs I have written down. Go, went, gone. Eat, ate, eaten. Walk, walked, walked. Rise, rose, risen. Has and have. had and had. Okay, now I would like you to have a close look at the examples I have written down following this tense, which is present indefinite tense. Just a close look. We work hard. Just have a look. At first the subject is written and after that the verb is used in its first form. Okay, and this word is included in the other words section, and I have already told you that sometimes we have other words in some sentences and sometimes we might not have other words. Okay, but these two things have to be taken into consideration. Okay, this is an action in the present time. Okay, this is the example of that. Just have a close look at the second example we have here. He goes for a walk every day. This is a habitual action. Remember that this is uncountable. The word walk is uncountable. Still we use a. Okay, sometimes we have expressions in English like he goes for a drive, he goes for a swim, he goes for a picnic, or he has got a cold. Sometimes we have these kind of expressions in English. Okay, where before the uncountable nouns we use a or an whenever needed. Okay, I'll not talk about all those expressions right at this moment. Let's have a look at the third example. The sun rises in the east. This is an example of a universal truth. Now let's have a look at the note, which is quite important in this respect. If the subject is third person and singular number, we have to add s or es to the end of the verb. Examples 2 and 3. This is the example of the third person singular number, and the sun is also an example of the third person singular number, and that is why we have added s or es to the end of the verb. Now let's have a close look at those words where we are supposed to add es. Okay, we are supposed to add es after those verbs ending with s or sh or ch. Just have a close look at the examples written over here. Passes, finishes, watches. Sometimes we have some verbs that end with y, and that y becomes I, and after that es is added to the verb. Just for an example, we have the word try, tries. We can also say study, studies. Okay, and we have two other words where we add es to the end of the verbs. Do and go. Does and goes should be there. Okay, now I would like to tell you a piece of information. Sometimes we have expressions like she has a dog or she is quite lazy. You know, sometimes initially some students might get confused. They might think that these are the examples of either present continuous tense as is there out of am is are, and sometimes they think as have or has is used in some sentences, they think that this is an example of present perfect tense, but actually it is not so. We have to think of the form. The subject is there, and after that the first form of the verb is used. In the example of she has a dog, though we have the word has, still we don't have the verb in its third form. Okay, we have to be very careful about the form, and if we look at the form and remember it, I think there is no room for confusion. Okay, thanks for watching.